grants can be fantastic, very powerful way of investing in things, but as a way of sustaining things, they're quite tiring. Someone who's done a lot of fundraising, and I think earning money through generating income through more commercial activities, it's far more immediate. It's far easier to see how the effort you put in pays back in terms of the income going up or not going up, and you can learn and iterate much more quickly.
Welcome to the Impact Files podcast. I'm your host, Ned Wells, and I'm really pleased you're here. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of the Impact Files podcast. We're delighted to be joined by Adrian Sell, Chief Executive of Oxford Wood Recycling. Adrian, let's start with an introduction to yourself.
Thank you, Ned, and thank you, Ali. So as you say, I'm Adrian Sell. I'm Chief Executive of Oxford Wood Recycling. Oxford Wood Recycling has been going over 20 years now. I took over about 5 months ago from Richard Snow, one of the founders, who had also been Chief Executive for about 15 years. We do a number of things, starting with collecting waste wood from businesses and domestic sites, basically identifying that a lot of wood had been ending up in landfill in years gone by, picking it up from businesses and taking it into a site in Abingdon, where we then can sort out any wood that's good enough to sell, and take any waste wood that's not usable to be processed and used in biomass fuel generation power stations. So it gives businesses a service because it's cheaper than skips, and we go and pick stuff up and just load it onto the truck and take it away for them. And it's environmentally good as well. It offsets or delays CO2 emissions, and the trucks we use are much lighter and smaller than skip lorries. So there's savings there, both in terms of cost and CO2. The wood shop in Abingdon, we take the reclaimed wood, we sell that alongside sustainable British hardwoods, other bought-in timbers, normally seconds, so that we've got a good range of stock. And then we do manufacture some products, and we process wood, so we sand and cut and make things look nice. So some of the hardwood slabs that we have in look very, very impressive when you walk into the shop. And we get a reasonably good trade in Abingdon to do that. And then within all of that work, we have a supporting to employment program where we take people who are facing barriers to employment, provide them with work experience, support in developing their CVs, job applications, and then into employment, hopefully. And we work with people facing a range of barriers, whether it be neurodiversity, lack of experience and qualifications, people who've come out of prison, this whole range of different issues. But we've supported about 10, 15 people a year into employment, and we'll be doing that again this year. And that helps the kind of social business that we are through providing us some capacity, but also helps them in terms of that, getting them back into employment and a productive way of life.
And when you say that you're supporting them into employment, does that mean that you're employing them yourselves?
Some of them, yes. So we've got a number of people employed in our workforce who've come through the employment support program, but we also have people. We had someone in the last couple of weeks who's just started a job with Tesco's, having not been in employment for many, many years, and he's delighted. And, so it can work in a number of different ways, but whilst they're getting the work experience, they will often be working with us, often in the wood shop, processing woods or serving customers, sometimes out with the collections team as well. But providing us some capacity and providing them with a meaningful work experience.
And in terms of the size of the business, what sort of scale are you?
Our turnover is about 800,000. We employ 20 to 25 people, mostly part-timers. I think we've got about 5 full-timers. I'm a part-time chief exec, and many of the staff are part-time. But the wood shop is open 7 days a week. The collections team work 5 days a week. We've got 4 vehicles that go out doing collections and deliveries as well, if orders from the wood shop. Often, if it's collection of scaffolding boards, for example, people won't be able to fit them in their car, so we will deliver them for them in the surrounding area. So it's a reasonably sizable organisation, sizable operation.
In terms of the sort of full-time equivalent head count, just to give us a picture of that, roughly where are you?
It's probably about 15, 18 people. I haven't actually counted it, to be honest, but yeah. So in terms of a full-time, 7-day-a-week operation, it's not a huge number of people, but yeah, it works.
So we'd be interested to hear a little more, Adrian, about how or what triggered your desire personally to run a business that balances purpose with profit.
Um, I mean, lots of things. I've always been very mission driven in the work I've done from, a holiday job when I was at sixth form into university. I was working as a care assistant in an old people's home. I went from that to working in a geriatric hospital and then into Oxfam, working on humanitarian relief programs. And that desire to be uh, delivering social value and being part of, a strong community has always been a very, very powerful driver for me. But alongside that, I'm also, you know, quite scientifically minded, quite rational, and I've always been quite business minded in how I've gone about things. And I can remember quite early on, I worked for a local authority for a number of years, and in a kind of internal consultancy role, and would often be talking to frontline people saying, "So why do we do this?" And they'd say, "Oh, well, it's good." And I'd say, "Well, how do you know it's good, and how do you know it's better than this, which you could also be doing?" And not necessarily comfortable conversations to have with people who've been working in a certain way for a number of years, and often did have a very good evidence base there. But asking those questions and always just trying to challenge and question and think about what is the most effective way of doing things. And then I've worked for charities most of my life, and always much preferred the kind of slightly more commercial side of things. Grants can be fantastic, very powerful way of investing in things, but as a way of sustaining things, they're quite tiring. It's someone who's done a lot of fundraising, and I think earning money through generating income through more commercial activities, it's far more immediate. It's far easier to see how the effort you put in pays back in terms of the income going up or not going up, and you can learn and iterate much more quickly than whereas with grants, I think with the best will in the world, and I'm chair of a grant making organisation, I think there's an element of luck within them because different people present in different ways, different things chime with different people, and if you're primarily looking at things in paper and maybe adding a couple of visits into that, it's still not a massive in-depth understanding. Whereas if you're going somewhere and buying a product or buying a service, you're doing that because you value that product or that service. And the fact that it's also doing social good, I think should be, if the service or product is good, should be something that people go, "Oh, well, that's great too." I mean, obviously, as social business people, some people come to us because they know we're selling reclaimed wood, and that's part of what they want. But ideally, people would come to us rather than going to one of the commercial organizations selling wood because we're cheaper, and they know that they'll also get fantastic customer service when they come to see us. And the environmental side may not matter so much for them, but they still want to come to us because we're highly competitive. So I think it motivates me, it excites me in a way that grant applications don't. And I also think it kind of is a lot more immediate and tangible as a kind of day-to-day way of operating.
Great, thank you. That all makes a lot of sense, and I think it's interesting to see. Perhaps you can remind us just what percentage of Oxford Wood Recycling's revenue is generated from trading, from the different pieces to that trading that you do.
I mean, it varies year to year, but it's I don't think it's ever below 80%, and it's often over 90%. So the collection service is at the moment about 50% of our income. The wood shop is about 40%, and grants donations are about 10%. And that's a really important 10%, but it's obviously a much smaller percentage than for a lot of charities and social organisations.
I had the pleasure of working for Leeds Wood Recycling about 18 months ago, and got familiar with the terminology, but I'm not sure that all our listeners will know what you mean by the collection service. Perhaps you could just elaborate on that.
So, as we are part of a national network of community wood recycling centres. There's 25 or so across the country, and Leeds is one. The collection service is the service that collects the waste wood from businesses. So we have 3.5-ton trucks that go out with a couple of with a driver and a support worker in them. They will pick up waste wood. Often that's if a building's being renovated, the builders will be pulling out all the wood that was there before, make a big pile of it. Our truck will turn up, load that up, and take it away. Sometimes it may be, more easily reclaimable wood. So obviously Oxford, we've got a huge number of colleges, and a lot of them will be doing renovations and repairs on their buildings, and we'll be pulling old wood out. And we'll sometimes go and collect beams and other quite interesting pieces of old wood. Pallets, there's an astonishing number of pallets in circulation. There's actually a kind of range of different qualities and sizes of pallets. So some of them we can bring in and sell, some of them we can help give out to people to use for projects. Some of it we can turn into products ourselves, but some of it sadly ends up getting chipped and used for fuel generation. But so the collection service is the team that are going out, collecting that waste wood, and either taking it for chipping or bringing it back to the shop and giving it fresh life.
Fantastic.
Thank you. I know we'll come back and do more of a deep dive into questions around revenue generation, but just before we come to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the business case for sustainability in OWR, or perhaps more specifically, what you see as your thresholds, your KPIs. How do you measure sustainability within the business?
So we have data on how many tons of waste wood we've collected, and it means that when we meet with businesses, we're able to say to them, and we can do annual reports for people on how many tons of waste wood we've collected from them, how much money that's saved them compared to using skips, and how much CO2 emissions that's offset. So we can do that for organizations, we can do that for ourselves as collectively as well. So the wood waste and CO2 are two critical indicators. Number of people supported into employment is probably the third in terms of the most important ones. And then supporting that, there's things like number of sales and volume of sales and value of sales in the wood shop, and the income that's generating, that's helping kind of promote and engage people with the idea of using sustainable wood sources. More widely, we also have a number of programs around education and learning and skills development alongside the Wood to Work employment support program. So we have a community shed where people come in and do projects around woodworking, and that's all part of trying to educate people and help people develop skills around using what would be waste wood if it wasn't being reclaimed and put back into use, and helping build awareness and understanding and knowledge around what you can do with reclaimed wood is another key area.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's so important. So your job, as it were, doesn't stop at the reclamation of the wood, the cleaning up of the wood, and saying, right, we've done a good job. We've salvaged wood there that would otherwise perhaps have gone to waste. You then enable, as you've described, people or you give them the skills to use that wood and prolong its life. So
it's kind of basic supply and demand. We create the supply through reclaiming the wood, but if the demand isn't there to use it, then it'll all just get chipped and used for power generation, which is okay, but isn't great. It isn't as good as it's staying in use in some way. So we try and help create the demand for the reclaimed wood through those education programs.
Great stuff, thank you. And again, you referred to it, but I like the application of the sustainability concept to the people side, or that part of OWR's mission as well. That you're supporting people into employment and hopefully giving them the skills that leads to long-lasting employment or more established employment. That should give them that support, both mental, but with the skills they need as well.
Yeah, one of my team the other day said something, I can't remember the exact phrase, I wish I could, but it was that we give new life to wood and we give new life to people. And I think there's something quite
that's lovely.
nice about that.
Very good. Yeah. Instant mission statement. I like it.
So we were really interested in your perspective on driving revenues from purpose-led organizations. Because my experience is that can be a real challenge for charities. It can be a real challenge for social enterprises. It can be incredibly easy for chief executives to have their time eaten up by writing grant applications. And fantastic to hear that. Did you say 80 to 90% of your revenue was from commercial sources? So it would be really interesting to hear some of the successes you've had, some of the ways that you've managed to sort of change mindsets in this sort of charitable social enterprise sector to become more sales oriented? I mean, sales is kind of such a sort of dirty word sometimes. So I'd love to hear some of the successes and some of the things that you've learned along the way.
Certainly. So I was very privileged to be executive director at Oxford Parent Infant Project for 4 years. A fantastic local organisation, part of a national network, working with parents and babies at the start of life, or before the start of life in some cases, to try and ensure there's a loving relationship there, which there's huge amounts of evidence is critically important for success in later life. And the OxPIP has, a probably 20, 30-year history now working with parents and babies, some incredibly skilled therapists who have been doing that work and developing that work and the thinking around it for years. And when I came in there was a lot of income coming from the local authority, from children's centres that were still active at that time and funded, and a little bit of training work going on, more because children's centres, for example, wanted to increase awareness and understanding of their staff around attachment theory, which was one of the kind of foundational theories behind a lot of the work. We did a lot of thinking and about future direction and strategy for the organisation, and we had some external consultants working with us on a pro bono basis, which was really helpful. And we looked at both the therapeutic work and the training work and how it could be funded and sustained. And the team obviously were motivated by doing the therapeutic work, and that was their primary interest. So the training at that time was kind of an afterthought and a bit of an add-on. But when we looked at the modelling financially about how much income we could get in and what margin we could make on that income, it became very clear that actually there was potential to make margin on training in a way that there just wasn't on the therapeutic work. The therapeutic work would pay for its costs, but rarely very much more. And modeling this and showing that to the team that if, a certain percentage of their time went into training, that actually the financial sustainability of the organization was much, much better, was critical to get their support and buy-in to investing more in the training. But also, demonstrated that actually that the sustainability of the organization, the financial strength of the organization would be much greater if we actively invested in that platform of work. I mean, I'm probably overselling the resistance in the team. I think there was interest in doing the training, but I think, actually putting the numbers down in front of the therapists helped them make the case amongst themselves for why we needed to be doing the training work. And we built the training from an income of a few tens of thousands to, I think it was 150,000 by the time I left, which for an organisation of a turnover of about sort of 400,000 or 500,000 provides a platform of income that gives strength and sustainability. That means that, as contracts come and go and funding comes and goes, you can still sustain the core of the organisation.
50,000 or so from training annually with your organisation that turns over 450, which is a significant chunk of revenue. And I guess the interesting thing to just dig down into is you were saying that once you had shown the staff the sort of opportunities from training to make the organisation a bit more sort of stable and secure, that was the main thing that kind of helped you to sell the idea. Is that more or less right? I mean, there must have been some sort of ongoing jitters perhaps from people about whether they wanted to do this, if they were primarily therapists. So how did that work out?
Yes, I mean, I don't think there was massive resistance to the idea of training, but the primary motivation was the therapeutic work. And I think there were some members of the team who liked the training and enjoyed delivering the training and developing the training. But I think it always been quite hard to make the case for why that was something that was worth doing when, obviously it shared knowledge and expertise with a wider number of people than just doing, 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 therapeutic work. But I think putting together the financial models helped make the case in a very compelling way that, I can remember, having graphs in front of people about, the income from training over multiple years and the projections of what that would do, and the margins on that training that we knew we could make because of what we'd already done in terms of selling the training. And I think it just helped people make the case for why investing their time in that was important, and why investing the organization's resources in it was important.
I was just interested in that theme of training as it's applicable to OWR, and just curious as to whether you see training provision as something you may expand on, and make one of the other sort of core pieces of OWR's revenue generating capabilities, but part of your offering as well.
Yes, well, we have run training courses. We had one a few weeks ago on how to do some basic woodworking techniques. We've got one coming up on how to build a picture frame, so you can join the course, come along, and walk away at the end of the day with a picture frame that you've made yourself. And we're looking to run more courses in the new year. Well, we've got one or two more tail end of this year, and then more into 2026. I don't think they're ever going to make a huge amount of money for us, but I think they're a nice way of engaging people and developing skills and building skills. We also have something called Community Shed, which is primarily focused on people in Caldecott Ward in Abingdon, but is open to people more widely to come along on a Wednesday evening, to work on a wood project that they're interested in some way, and have input and oversight from carpenters there who can provide guidance and expertise on how best to work. And we want to build that, and we're also talking with people like the Abingdon Bridge about doing that with young people in Abingdon as well, and trying to develop wood skills with young people in Abingdon. So, and I mean, further downstream, I think we're also keen to have more capacity to do outreach, because that could both help in terms of that education, awareness, and understanding of reclaimed wood and the uses it can be put to, but also us as an organisation and the products and services that we're offering, and some just basic marketing around that would hopefully help drive sales and income, as well as the wider understanding about the kind of the sustainability ethos and work that we do.
Thank you. Yes, that's very interesting about the sort of synergies and the perhaps intangible or not so obvious benefits through those connections that you're describing there. Sorry, Ned, did you want to come in?
No, I was just reflecting on what you were saying about the training not being a massive revenue generator of itself, but it strikes me as being a great way to raise awareness of your other services. And I guess that makes me sort of think, I mean, we're going to talk about marketing a bit later, but it's like my thoughts are coming on to, so who are the sort of target audiences that you want to be engaging with from a revenue generation point of view, and then what are the sort of the training services that you can offer them? But that's maybe something we could look at in a moment.
That thought. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask next, whether you've needed to, at this stage, or whether you have in your sights putting in more processes, and indeed thinking about the support you need to give people within the organisation to support your need to be profitable as well as sustainable. I thought it was very interesting what you were saying about Oxpip, and I'm sure you will have encountered that in other places where people come to organisations with different motivations, don't they? And sometimes, I think Ned said earlier, sometimes the financial or the commercial piece may seem like a bit of a dirty word. So I'm interested to know, both in the process, but the people side as well, what you've needed to do thus far.
Yeah, so we are a very neurodiverse organisation. I think there's a lot of people, who are employed by us, some of whom have come through the employment support program and therefore have come through the barriers that they face to get employment in that way. Some of whom are just attracted to working with wood because there's something quite therapeutic about working with wood. And one of our apprentice carpenters said to me this week, he said, I think everyone who works with wood has got mental health problems, haven't they? Well, I'm also on record as having said that I think we've all got mental health problems one way or another. So, it's I think there is something, and I think probably one of the reasons I got the job is because I've got quite a strong mental health background, and there is a very strong ethos in the organisation of it being, I think it would be overly over claiming to say it's a kind of therapeutic environment, but it is a paratherapeutic environment. I think there is a lot of care and looking after people that goes on within the organisation. I think there's an incredibly warm heart in the organisation, and I've spoken with people who've had volunteered there or had their children volunteer there, who've said it's the place that they felt most supported and most themselves. And when we have young people who come to us who really really struggle at school and don't get on in an academic environment but absolutely thrive in a wood shop, and that's kind of wonderful to see. So I think there's something quite important about that ethos within the organization and that community within the organization that means that there's a variety of motivations for why people come to us. But they all gel together around kind of being around wood and the productivity and the kind of purpose of the organization.
Yes, that's interesting. So does that, and one thing needn't automatically follow the other, but I wondered, does that mean sometimes it might be more difficult to get buy-in to the commercial side? So thinking of your employees, the people on the payroll, is there sometimes difficulty? Are people all on board? Do people subscribe to the same, or do people have the same understanding of where you need to be financially? Do they need to? Perhaps they don't need to. Perhaps
I
that's
think
you. Well,
they I think because it's a social business, I think there is a better understanding at OWR than there is in quite a lot of small charities. I think in small charities there can be a feeling that grants and local authority contracts come in and that pays for the work, and that's great. Whereas OWR, we are overtly a social business and people know that. So I think there is more buy-in. That doesn't mean it isn't a challenge at times to kind of keep people focused, because you get a carpenter in and they want to do things that interest them with wood, and that may not be exactly the same thing as the things that will sell. So that there's some sort of dialogue and conversations need to happen there. But yeah. So there are challenges there for sure, and there are conversations and ongoing dialogue. But I think it's actually a more commercially minded organisation than most charities I've worked in.
So within the organisation, Adrian, is it principally you that is involved with the financial side of things, or do you have sort of colleagues who are fighting that fight alongside you?
I mean, it's primarily me, but there are people involved in different ways. So yeah, the operations manager who has oversight of the wood shop and the activities within that is very invested in the figures for the wood shop, and what
Right.
the takings are on a day-to-day basis. We have a online system, so I could log on now and see how much money we've taken today and this week
Right.
and this month, and I have to try and stop myself from doing that too often. But it can be wonderful and it can be depressing depending on how the day's going. So, but yeah, you can get lost in that detail a little bit. But yeah, she's very much on top of that in terms of the wood shop and managing the stock levels, thinking about the marketing and promotion, thinking about the social media side of things there. We've got a collections manager who obviously oversees the collections service, and he's on top of the figures there in terms of the numbers of collections. Come midway through the month, he'll have a projection for what he thinks the income figures are going to be for that month, and that's normally within a few £100 of being accurate. And so he's well on top of that, and he knows what the cost base is in terms of staffing costs and managing the vehicles. That can be less predictable and lumpier, but so he's invested in that. And then from the board level, there's a board input and oversight of the finances. And then within the team, we've got a fantastic business administrator who does all the bookkeeping and keeps on top of the accounts and makes sure there's the bank account and the zero are reconciled and the financial figures are up to date. And so we can get month-end financial figures within a week of the end of a month, which is pretty good going for an organization. But it means that we've got very live, very up-to-date financial information at our fingertips, which is really helpful.
that's great, because actually I was going to ask you about sort of the quality of your data, but it sounds like, as you've described there, you've got it's visible and yeah, it's visible and easily interpretable, if that's the right word. Yeah. You can interrogate
Yeah,
easily.
our data, we've got good data.
Yeah.
It's just we've got far too many systems that don't talk to one another. But it's all there. It just could be much, much better organized and managed. But that's a project for next year, probably.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, thank you. I think, Ned, probably you'd like to dive into some more marketing talk.
Yes, exactly. I mean, fascinated to know what role marketing plays in helping you to sort of achieve those near-term financial objectives, but also keeping you on that sort of sustainable road. And I'm thinking in marketing, I'm thinking of marketing in the sort of broadest sense of marketing communications internally, externally,
Yeah.
at a kind of strategic level, more probably than than the sort of tactical stuff.
So the collection service, our national partner, work at a national level with builders and other national organisations to try and get referrals that way. So I think about 40% of our collections work comes through our national partner. It might be 50%, but a significant chunk of work comes that way. Locally, we are pretty well embedded in the local kind of building sector. There are gaps, and we'll work on those, but most builders know about us and make use of our services to some degree. The areas that don't, where there's new builds coming in, for example, we will then try and work through kind of networks in Oxfordshire to make contact and reach out to those people to make sure they're aware of us. The biggest challenge in terms of marketing we have is for the wood shop. We are sited in Abingdon. We're outside the city centre, so there's no natural footfall passing us. We are next to a very good next door to a very good brewery, Loose Cannon, so they bring some passing trade. But getting people into the wood shop and getting people aware that we're there and what we offer is the biggest marketing challenge we have as an organisation. And we do that through a number of things. I mean, social media, we post on Facebook and Instagram on a regular basis. We try and connect into local networks in Abingdon through a whole variety of community forums and networks, through flyers and posters out into the local community. And then we are increasingly trying to tap into the kind of environmental networks, because we know the kind of sustainably conscious DIYers, hobbyists, and small scale builders are a kind of core business market for us. And there's still a lot of people out there who aren't aware we exist. And so keeping going to try and reach out to those people and get that awareness up is the biggest challenge.
That was something that was occurring to me when you were talking earlier about the reporting you're doing on CO2 saved and wood waste and the number of people supported into business. Is that there's a potentially, I would imagine, a significant market of people that, if they knew about you, would be very interested in what Oxford Wood Recycling sells, because it's really good value and it's local and all the rest of it. But there's a certain kind of segment of people who, I suppose what I'm thinking is that there are matching up the sort of the people that really mind about those environmental and social criteria, and are involved with wood in some way. That's quite a tricky one.
It is. And, going back to what I was saying earlier about, wanting to offer a good value commercial product to anybody. We had two Romanian guys in a few weeks ago buying big bits of wood for a building project they were doing at home. They had no clue we were a charity, and they didn't, they were interested once I told them, but actually they were there because we had wood that was cheap, that was going to be useful for what they wanted to do. And so there is, quite wide markets out there to try and tap into. And we're still, challenged at getting how we increase the footfall in the wood shop, because we know when people come in, if they want to buy wood, they'll buy something from us because, as you said, we're great value and we've got a good range of products. But getting that word out is a challenge.
And there's a very good podcast which I listened to called "Can Marketing Save the Planet?" and an episode they were doing was talking about just this. And one of the case studies they came up with, or that they discussed, was to do with Octopus Energy, I think it was. And it was a study that looked at the different people and their sentiments, the different audiences and customers of Octopus Energy. And there was a distinct segment of people who were actually, you might categorize them as climate deniers, weren't interested in that at all. But it was the customer service, it was the price, it was the product that they liked. And I think that was a really interesting one to reflect on. That, I mean, I've not looked at your marketing, but could there be more emphasis on we're good, we're inexpensive, we're local, you should come and visit us, and the social value and the sort of environmental value, although internally it's really important, could that almost be secondary in the marketing?
Yes, and I think we do some of that to a degree, but I think you're right. We could probably put more emphasis on that. And I think some of the community work we do is obviously about the kind of awareness and knowledge around reclaimed wood, but it is also about outreach and promotion and marketing and getting our name out there. I think there's also something for me that I've tried to push is that if you come in and aren't sure what you need, we've got a fantastic team of people who are hugely knowledgeable, who will give you advice and support and guidance in a way that, you know, a commercial wood seller simply won't.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that service aspect, I think, is something that I've been trying to get us to push more. And I think some of our social media and marketing now does talk more about, you know, the advice and the fact that we'll cut wood to length, we can sand it, you know, we can, as well as offering advice and guidance and support. So I think there's a whole service aspect which I think makes us quite unusual in the sector, wherein for people who maybe don't have as much expertise, have an idea about what they want to do, but don't quite know the details of how they're going to get there, they can come in and talk to someone and, you know, go away with not just the things they're carrying, but more knowledge and understanding in their head as well about how they're going to do it.
Adrian, you've mentioned the fact that you are well networked with timber suppliers, local timber suppliers. So I'm assuming this is local branches of Travis Perkins and the like. Is there any tension there in terms of competitiveness? Is there a concern from the timber merchants that you're competitors, or does that work by you saying, well, we're here to take your seconds off your hands for a reasonable price, and we're not direct competitors? Or how do you manage that piece of slightly sensitive marketing?
So in as much as we're networked with them, it'll be around the collection service, so picking up waste wood from them. The seconds we buy from a national wood supplier. So it's not normally from local sellers. It's before it gets to them. If a pallet of wood is not up to standard for some reason, you know, if there's a certain number of them that are bendy or knotted, you know, they'll go into the second sale, and people like us will pick them up. And then, you know, once they're in the shop, people can pick through and pick the good ones out, and then we end up with what we can call a load of bananas. But interesting, but last time we had a load of bananas, we put them on social media, and someone came up and took the lot because he was cutting them into short lengths, and so the fact that they were warped didn't actually matter, and he got a bargain, and, you know, some wood got used that would otherwise have been waste. So yeah, so I don't think we don't feel like we're directly competing. We obviously are directly competing, but I don't think there's any, you know, tension there. I think it's just, you know, it's a competitive market, and we're all trying to get our voice and get known and heard and noticed.
We wondered, where do you see the organisation? Where do you see OWR in 12 months from now? Again, appreciating that you've only been there 5 months, as you were saying, Adrian, but where would you like it and need the organisation to be in 12 months' time?
I would hope so. Going back to the national network I mentioned of community wood recycling centres, there's a lot of gaps across the country. So if we go south from Oxford, Reading, Southampton, there's no community wood recycling centres there. If we go kind of east and north, High Wycombe, Milton Keynes, Northampton, there's nothing there. Go west, there's Bristol, and there's one probably starting in Gloucester. So, and into London, there's quite a few dotted around London, but there's a lot of parts of the country that aren't served by a collection service like the one we offer for businesses to get rid of waste wood. So I'd like to be getting some investment so we can set up satellite sites, and that's buying a truck, employing a couple of people, having a site in places like Reading and Milton Keynes where we can keep a bit of what we call keepy, the reclaimed wood that we can resell in the shop. So the guys or girls can go out, collect the waste wood, put any of the keepy in the storage site there, and then when there's enough, drive it back up to the wood shop in Abingdon, and we can then sell it through the wood shop there. So we're starting then to offer the circular economy service in a wider geographical area than just Oxfordshire, and then over time, hopefully adding more wood shops across the country, possibly looking at a high street venue so that we have got that natural footfall in place, and so we're not having to kind of promote and market ourselves, but we've got a customer base that's coming to us a bit more. And then the Abingdon site could be more focused on the production side and the workshop side. I think alongside that, I think I mentioned outreach earlier, bringing together the kind of education, awareness raising, opportunities to sell and educate people and develop skills around wood, having, a small team or one or two people that can go out and go to things like, community events like Flowfest and things like that, and be there, promoting reclaimed wood and the myriad of uses it can be put to, and promoting us as an organisation and raising awareness of us and reclaimed wood would be a really important component. And, continuing to develop the production in the wood shop in Abingdon. So at the moment we're starting to build things for the domestic market, but looking to build planters and benches and other things for the commercial market, and tapping into that a bit more. And as that capacity grows, we can start to then think about building slightly more complex, involved things, and meeting the demand that we know is there for kind of products made from reclaimed wood. And that may then also include looking at online markets so that we're selling not just to the geographical market around Abingdon or Oxford, but more broadly as well.
Great, thank you. So no shortage of ambitions then, and I don't know whether this is the case, but I have to say, when I first learned from you that there are these gaps in the local collection centres, I was amazed to hear that, and I guess that speaks perhaps to people trying and failing, or lessons learned the hard way. I'm sure you'll have domestic and business customers, jumping to use this type of service, but it's interesting that it isn't there already.
There's a huge amount of sort of interesting things that you've got in mind for the next 12 months, and might even be more time. Do you have? I mean, I'm aware that you've not been with the organisation long, but are you beginning to form a vision for what you'd like this kind of sector to look like in maybe 10 years' time?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious one is national coverage, so that wherever you are in the country, that you can access a collection service and go somewhere to buy reclaimed wood. So that's kind of the obvious one. And I think there's a lot of learning we need to do as a network about how we can grow and develop and operate as a network. I think there's a good model there. The national partner very much sees themselves as serving the local partners, which isn't always the case in sort of federated charitable social structures. So I think we're building from a very good place, and the network's only 25 years old, so it's pretty early days in many ways. So I think the national coverage is the obvious thing that I'd like to see in 10 years' time.
Do you have a view on whether more regulation is needed, Adrian, or indeed less?
I mean, I think the regulation environment has been moving and pushing kind of the building sector and other sectors towards more environmental awareness and sustainability, and I think that's undoubtedly helped. I think when new building sites that get developed, of which there's a number in Oxfordshire at the moment, there are within those funding streams money to make sure that there's community employment plans and sustainability plans, and a lot of pressure on the builders to make sure that they're not putting wood into landfill and that they are thinking about the environmental impact of what they're doing. So I think that environmental framework helps without a doubt. I'm not knowledgeable enough about the specifics to know what else is needed on that front, but I think just continuing that legislative pressure is a good thing.
Right, thank you.
Fantastic. One piece of advice for social enterprises who are looking to get away from grant based income.
I think thinking about what you've got that other people might want or need, and that, I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about earned income, but I think there's other ways you can come at that. So I was involved in running Cowley Road Carnival for 2 years, and we had quite significant funding from BMW, who effectively, we used to joke, paid to close the road. And you think, well, why is a car manufacturer paying to close a road? Because they knew that the people who came to Carnival were a lot of their employees, because we served the demographic and the geographical area. And so they were therefore very keen to be seen giving something back into the local community. And, they got visual prominence at the Cowley Road Carnival because they invested a lot of money in it. And so thinking about, what you're doing, what activities you've got, what constituencies you've got and stakeholders, and what kind of knowledge and expertise you've got, and whether that is kind of valuable to someone else in some way. And it may not be selling it, but it may be kind of finding an alignment in some way that where they can give you some money because you're able to then give them access to something that they would otherwise struggle to reach.
That is so interesting. I did not know that about the Cowley Road Carnival.
I don't think they fund it anymore, unfortunately.
Okay. Adrian, that's been really, really interesting. Thank you so much. I'd like to wrap up by asking how people can find out more about you and how they can find out more about Oxford Wood Recycling.
Website, oxfordwoodrecycling.org.uk. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and posting there on a regular basis. We have a newsletter that goes out about every couple of months, so do sign up for that. Or just drop me a line. I'm very happy to chat. I love meeting new people and talking about what we do.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it with your colleagues. For more about the podcast, about us, our marketing services, and our wider support for purpose-led organisations, please visit our website at theimpactfiles.co.uk.